Marcus Aurelius kept a journal. He was a Roman emperor, and in it he wrote something simple. You control your mind, not events. That's where strength comes from. It's not just a feeling, it's something you can build, a structure inside. So this is about that structure, the Stoic mind, its architecture, the virtues it's built on. The disciplines, the frameworks. How do you stay calm when things fall apart? What are the actual tools, the psychological tools that create composure from chaos? The goal is a design, a blueprint for an inner citadel, a place of stability, no matter what happens. That's the resilient mind. The first stone in the Stoic mind is a filter. You sort everything into two categories, what's up to you and what's not. Epictetus said it clearly, some things are in our power, others are not. In our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion. Whatever is our own doing, not in our power are our body, property, reputation. Whatever is not our own doing, that's the dichotomy of control. It's a habit, a constant practice. Your effort on a project is within your power. The client's final approval, a shift in the market, that's not. Your choice to be kind is within your power. Their reaction is not. This filter conserves emotional energy. Your mind is a fortress. The dichotomy is the gate. It decides what you let inside to defend and what stays outside. It was never yours to command. Anxiety, frustration, they come from a missorting, trying to control the weather or another person's mood or a past event. The practice is to catch yourself and resort, to pull your acceptance for what he couldn't change. His focus was on what he still commanded. His own character, his final actions, that's the test of the citadel's strength, when everything external is stripped away. So you might think about something external now. Something that feels threatening to your peace, a money worry, a tension with someone, a health concern, and instead of focusing on the threat, you could ask how to strengthen your inner walls against it. Maybe by cultivating the wisdom to see the situation clearly, to separate the facts from the story you're telling, or by mustering the courage to take that one small, right action. The one that's in your control, while letting go of the outcome. The citadel is maintained through daily practice, quiet practice, not in one grand gesture. The mind's first story about something is just a draft. It's not necessarily the truth. The Stoics had a name for this, the discipline of assent. It's the practice of guarding your judgments, of pausing before you accept that initial impression as reality. You can think of your mind as having a gatekeeper. Its job is to examine every thought that tries to enter, to ask if the impression is accurate, if it's complete, if it's helpful to believe it right now. Without that gatekeeper, every impression gets a free pass. And that's where so much distress comes from, not from the events themselves, but from the unchecked stories we attach to them. Epictetus said it plainly. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. Take that email from your boss that felt cold. The event is the text on the screen. The judgment is the story you immediately write, that they're upset with you, that your work is inadequate, that you're in trouble. That story creates a physical reaction. A tightening in your chest, a rush of worry. The discipline of assent creates a space between the event and that reaction. In that space, you examine the draft. You look at the facts. The email was brief. It contained a request. That's all you know for certain. Every other layer, the tone, the intention, the meaning, that's your mind's first draft. The practice is to question it, to ask if there could be another draft. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe the brevity was meant as efficiency, not criticism. By withholding your immediate assent to the worst-case story, you reclaim your peace. You can respond from clarity, not from a triggered fear. Think of a recent time when your initial judgment of a situation proved to be exaggerated or incorrect upon reflection. That moment of realizing the problem wasn't nearly as big as you first thought. That's the discipline of assent in action. It's not about suppressing thought. It's about elevating it from a reactive guess to a considered choice. This is how you fortify the inner citadel. You don't just build walls to keep trouble out. You train the guards at the gate to carefully inspect everything that seeks entry. One tool in Stoic thought is the view from above. You pull back from your immediate situation. You imagine yourself not just in a room but on the planet. You see the long stretch of time, all the people who came before and all who will come after. From that distance, your own problems start to look smaller. They don't disappear, but they sit inside a much larger frame. That can bring a kind of humility, even a quietness. Marcus Aurelius used this exercise constantly. He'd tell himself to look down from a high place on the crowds and the rituals, the journeys and the arguments. He'd think about how short one life is, set against eternity. He wrote that the longest life and the shortest life end the same. This wasn't to make things feel pointless. It was to see what actually matters. When your life feels like one small part of a huge, continuing story, the little worries and the battles of ego loosen their hold. You're a thread in a big tapestry. Your thread matters, but you stop fixating on a single knot. Take a common stress like a conflict at work. In the moment, it takes up everything. The tension, the words, the feeling of unfairness. Now try the view from above. Picture your office building from a satellite. See the city as a pattern of lights, the continent as a shape on a globe. Then jump ahead a year. Will this specific disagreement, this moment of friction, even be something you remember? Will it have changed your life in any real way? From there, the event often shrinks down. It becomes what it is, a passing cloud in a big sky. This perspective isn't about not caring, it's about wisdom. It turns raw feeling into a quieter, steadier kind of understanding. Your worry is real, but it's also temporary, and it's small within the grand scheme. That realization is a source of strength because it means you aren't alone in your struggle. You're part of the human story with all its brief victories and difficulties. So take a current worry, hold it in your mind, and then pull the camera back. See it from the end of the year, from the scale of a lifetime, from the quiet expanse of space. How big does it seem now? This shift in scale isn't running away. It's coming back to a more accurate and a more resilient way of seeing. The idea of freedom might not be about changing your situation. It might be about accepting it completely. That's Amor Fati, loving your fate. It sounds almost impossible to not just endure what happens, but to embrace it. To see every event, even the difficult ones, as necessary, a part of your story. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus set this foundation. He taught that we should want events to happen exactly as they do. Later, Nietzsche would take up the phrase, but its root is Stoic. This isn't passive. It's an active, architectural choice. You build your mind's resilience by using the materials life gives you. Even the rough ones, you stop fighting the stone in front of you. You ask how you can use it to strengthen your wall. Think of a musician losing their hearing. That's not a metaphor, it was reality for Beethoven, a profound, unwanted challenge. Amor Fati wouldn't mean he was happy about it. It would mean accepting that reality as his new starting point. Then asking, within this new reality, what is possible? His later compositions, some of his most powerful, came from that place of acceptance. The obstacle didn't just block a path. It forced a new, more internal one. The event became fuel. In your own life, this might see a job loss not as a pure catastrophe, but as the necessary push toward a different career. It might view a failed relationship not as a waste of time, but as the exact lesson needed to understand what you truly need. The practice is to look at the unwelcome event and say, "This is here. This is part of my story now. How can it serve my growth? How can it become a chance to practice courage or patience or wisdom?" This reframes everything. The flat tire isn't just an annoyance, it's a chance to practice calm. The difficult feedback isn't just criticism, it's raw material for building better skills. You start to see life not as a series of good and bad breaks, but as a single narrative, where every chapter, even the painful ones, is essential. So consider a current challenge, something you've been resisting. What if you stopped seeing it as a mistake in your plan and started viewing it as part of the plan itself? What strength might it be inviting you to develop? What new direction might it be clearing the way for? This love of fate is the final, most resilient layer. It means the world cannot give you a weapon you cannot use to build. The Stoics had this practice. They would go into the scenarios you naturally want to avoid. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. But it's not worrying, it's a rehearsal, a calm one, a rational one. It's like a fire drill. You don't do a fire drill because you think there will be a fire. You do it so that if the alarm goes off, you know where the exits are. Panic gets replaced by procedure, and they applied that to life. You mentally rehearse losing the things you value. Not to dwell on the sorrow of it, but to disarm the fear of it, to appreciate what you have while it's here, and to be ready in your mind for the chance it might not be. Seneca wrote about this. He told his friend Lucilius to set aside days to practice poverty, to wear rough clothes, to eat simple food, and to reflect. He said we should tell ourselves each day you could lose your property, your status, even the people you love. This isn't pessimism, it's a form of insurance. By thinking about loss ahead of time, you take away its power to shock you. You've already walked that path in your mind, so when life takes a turn, you're not starting from total surprise. You have a map, a rough one, but a map. The purpose is two things. First, it builds an emotional inoculation. That initial sting of a hardship, that's often the worst part. Premeditatio exposes you to that sting in a safe place, a controlled one, and over time, the idea of the hardship loses its power to paralyze you. Second, and maybe more immediate, it creates a deep gratitude. An active one. By imagining your life without a certain comfort or a person, you instantly see its value with fresh eyes. You stop taking it for granted. Think of a modern version. Rehearse losing a common convenience, like internet access for a week. Don't just think about the annoyance, walk through the steps. How would you communicate? How would you find information? How would you fill the time you usually spend scrolling? This exercise isn't about predicting doom. It's about discovering your own adaptability. It's about realizing that even this tool, this deeply integrated one, is not the foundation of your peace. Your mind is, so take a moment, mentally lose a comfort you rely on. It could be your morning coffee, your quiet commute, the ability to call a particular friend. Don't rush, just sit with the imagined absence for a few breaths. How does that shift your feeling toward that thing right now? Does it seem more precious? Does your dependence on it feel a little less absolute? This small act of mental rehearsal, it's a brick in your inner citadel. It proves to you in a quiet way that your stability isn't held hostage by external things. You visited the scenario of their loss, and you found yourself still standing there, capable and whole. Courage in Stoicism isn't about heroics, it's more about endurance. The structural beam, the thing that holds you up when things get uncertain, it's not that you don't feel fear, it's that you judge clearly and act rightly anyway. Wisdom might show you the path, but courage is what lets you walk it, especially when the path is rough, when you can't see very far. It's the fortitude to uphold justice when looking away is easier. To practice temperance when everything is pulling you toward indulgence. Seneca wrote about this in On the Firmness of the Wise Man. He called it an unshakable soul. The wise person isn't moved by fortune's assaults. They stand firm like a rock. The waves break against it and are shattered, and that's not about refusing to feel. It's a stability of character. The courageous mind understands the risk. It feels the apprehension, and it still chooses to proceed because the action aligns with principle. It's that quiet resolve to do the next right thing, even when no one sees it, even when the reward is far off. You see this in ordinary life, the quiet courage to voice a dissenting opinion in a meeting. Not to cause conflict, but because silence would betray something you value. The persistence in a daily practice, writing or exercise, on the very day stress tells you to quit. The strength to have a difficult, honest conversation, because avoiding it would cause a deeper fracture. These aren't acts for history books, but they're the material. The material that builds a resilient character. Each one is a beam laid across your inner architecture, proving that fear doesn't have the final say. So where is fear present for you right now? It might be a social anxiety about a gathering, a professional fear about a new responsibility, a personal worry about being vulnerable. With this definition in mind, ask yourself, what would acting with courage look like there, not as a grand gesture, but as a single, principled step? Maybe it's preparing thoroughly and just showing up. Maybe it's speaking one truthful sentence. It could be deciding to begin and accepting that the outcome isn't yours to command. That's how courage is woven in, one deliberate, principled action at a time, especially when you feel that tremor of uncertainty in your hands. Wisdom is the plan. It tells you where everything else goes. Phronesis, the Stoics called it. It's not facts, it's practical knowledge, seeing what's truly good, what's truly bad, and what just doesn't matter. It's the blueprint for every judgment, every action, every time you try to be courageous or just. Without that plan, the other virtues are just materials. Piled up, you could have courage, but it might be in the wrong place. You could have discipline aimed at the wrong thing. Wisdom tells you where to build. And why? Zeno, who started Stoicism, defined the good life simply, a life in agreement with nature. And to do that, you need wisdom first, to understand what that means. For a person, our nature is rational and social, so the good is acting rationally with concern for others. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, those are preferred or not. But they're indifferent to your character. They aren't good or bad themselves. Wisdom is what does that sorting in real time. It applies the dichotomy of control. Not as a theory, but as a filter you live by. It decides when to withhold assent from a fearful story. It recognizes the only true good is the quality of your choices. The only true bad is the corruption of your character. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this. He'd remind himself to strip away the story, see things as they are. In their naked reality, not as you wish or as you fear, but as they are. That's the work of wisdom. It cuts through the noise, opinion, social pressure. To find the solid ground, fact and principle. When you face conflicting information or a barrage of advice, wisdom doesn't look for the loudest voice. It looks for the one aligned with nature. It asks what action here would be rational, what action here would be just. The external outcome of that action, whether it succeeds or fails by the world's standards, that's secondary. It's an indifferent, the good was in the choosing. Take a personal decision, like leaving a stable job for something passionate but uncertain. The world gives you conflicting advice. One voice says security is everything, another says follow your dream. Wisdom steps back from both. It examines the facts, your situation, your responsibilities, your capabilities. But its primary question isn't which path is safer or more exciting. Its primary question is which choice lets me act with the greatest virtue. Maybe courage is needed to make a change. But maybe justice and duty call you to honor your commitments a while longer. The wisdom is in discerning which virtue is the guide here. And then, having chosen, you understand the success of the venture, the profit, the acclaim. That's a preferred indifferent. Your good was secured in the virtuous deliberation, the principled choice. The rest isn't up to you. So think of a recent difficult choice. It probably felt like weighing external outcomes. A risk of loss versus a chance of gain. Now reframe it through the Stoic blueprint. How could the definition of good as your own virtuous action, your honesty, your courage, your fairness, how could that have informed the decision? And how could seeing the potential outcomes as merely indifferent have changed the weight of the worry? That shift is the essence of practical wisdom. It turns every dilemma from a question of what will happen to me into a question of who will I choose to be, and in that question you find a compass. One that never fails because it points always inward to the integrity of your own design. The mind is like a fortress, and temperance is the law inside it. It's not about saying no just to say no, it's about governing yourself. It's the rational control of what you want and what you don't want. It's the virtue that says enough. Enough to chasing pleasure all the time, enough to running from discomfort. That discipline creates a kind of inner harmony. You're not thrown around by every want or fear. The Stoics called this state Apatheia, not apathy, but a clear tranquility. It's the absence of those destructive passions that cloud your judgment, that enslave your will. Epictetus put it very clearly. He said freedom isn't getting what you desire, it's removing the desire itself, and the same for aversion. You're not chained by what you avoid. You're chained by your need to avoid it. If you master your desires and aversions, you walk through the world free. Temperance is that mastery. It's the daily practice of lining up your impulses with your choice. Deciding your peace is worth more than a quick thrill or avoiding some minor hardship. Think about social media, the endless scroll. It's designed to trigger desire for something new, for validation, for a distraction, and it triggers aversion too, the fear of missing out, of being disconnected. A temperate approach isn't calling it evil. It's an exercise in self-command. It's deciding to set a timer, to close the app not when you're drained, but when you've had enough for your purpose. You're not depriving yourself, you're governing your attention. You're proving the infinite feed doesn't control your time or your mood. Every time you pause successfully, you reinforce that law inside your mind. You strengthen the part that can see the urge without having to follow it. This applies to simpler things, wanting a third drink when two were fine, avoiding a hard but necessary conversation. Temperance asks you to put a moment of space between the impulse and the action. In that space, you consult your own governance. You ask, is this too much? Is this avoidance? Will this serve my long-term peace or just satisfy a short-term craving? Practicing this builds a contented sufficiency. You find that having enough, being enough, becomes a real strength. Stronger than any temporary satisfaction from more. So think about a desire or aversion that feels strong lately. Maybe it's the desire for constant productivity, even instead of rest. Or the aversion to a feeling like boredom or being alone. What would a temperate relationship with it look like? Not a war to suppress it, but a calm agreement of moderation. Maybe it means scheduling focused work and then resting without guilt, or letting yourself have 10 minutes of quiet without picking up a device. In these small acts of self-command, you're not walling off life. You're making sure you hold the keys to your own gates, not your passions. A Stoic mind isn't a fortress alone. It has bridges, they're built on justice. The inner citadel has gates that open out. That's the social architecture, the virtue that tells you your strength isn't just for you, it's for the community. It's a duty to others, to treat them fairly, with kindness, to contribute to the common good, even when you're dealing with your own uncertainty, especially then. That's how the Stoic sees the world, not separate individuals, a single organism, a city, and each of us is a limb of that body. To act unjustly, to harm another, is to harm a part of yourself. It fractures your own inner architecture because it goes against your nature, your rational, social nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings no benefit to the bee." In another passage, he said we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids. To act against that is to be at war with nature, and that war creates chaos inside. So justice isn't optional, it's the layout of the citadel. It decides how you move through the shared spaces of life. It means seeing the humanity in everyone. The tired cashier, the stressed colleague, the stranger who cut you off, they're acting from their own struggles, their own limited view. Your job practicing justice isn't to add to the world's injury. It's to meet it when you can with a corrective fairness. That might look like patience. You're rushing, stressed about a deadline, and the person ahead is slow. Justice then is to withhold the sigh, the glare, the internal complaint, to recognize their right to be there, to move at their own pace. It's a small gift of peace. Offered in a chaotic world, it costs you nothing but a moment of self-command, and it strengthens your own character, because you chose the rational, social response over the reactive, selfish one. Or take a more direct case, you're giving feedback. The just action is honesty without cruelty, to aim for the betterment of the person or the project, not to vent your frustration. You frame it fairly, you acknowledge what worked before stating what needs change. Justice as a craft, a careful, constructive craft. In the middle of your own challenges, how can you extend an act of fairness today? It doesn't need to be grand. It could be listening fully to a family member without rehearsing your reply. It could be letting a car merge during a frustrating commute. Each act is a stone placed in a bridge. It connects your inner stability to the world outside. It proves your resilience isn't cold or withdrawn. It's a source of warmth for others. And in that giving, you often find your own burden feels lighter. Your own uncertainty is put in perspective because you're no longer just managing your own internal world. You're participating in the repair of the shared one. That's the final outward expression, a mind built for peace that builds peace. The Stoic mind sees the past and future as distant places. We live in the present. That's the only place you have any real agency. The past is just facts already fixed. The future is possibilities not formed yet. Your power to think, to choose, to act, that's only in the now. Worrying about what might happen, regretting what already did, that's a kind of mental absence. It's like you're exiling yourself from the only place you can actually do anything. The dichotomy of control lies here. You can plan for the future, but you can only execute that plan in the present. You can learn from the past, but you can only apply that lesson right now. This focus is a tool against the anxiety of not knowing. It anchors you. Seneca saw this. He wrote that we have this habit of postponing our lives. We think we have time. We tell ourselves we'll really live later, but life is being lost right now in this day. He said we aren't given a short life, we make it short. We don't lack time, we waste it. By leaning into the future with worry or clinging to the past with regret, we abandon the only moment we ever truly own. Marcus Aurelius came back to this in his private writings. He reminded himself the present moment is all anyone ever loses. You can't lose the past or the future because you don't own them. The only thing that's yours is the now, and it's enough. It's the only place where virtue can be practiced. You can't be courageous yesterday. You can't be just tomorrow. You can only exercise those qualities in the immediate choice in front of you. So how do you live here? One simple practice is to anchor yourself in a routine task. Not as an automatic motion, but with full engagement. The next time you make coffee or tea, do it with complete attention. Feel the weight of the kettle. Listen to the water heating, watch the steam rise, smell the grounds or the leaves. This isn't about the drink. It's a training exercise in being present. It pulls your mind back from wandering into those distant lands of worry and plants it in the sensory reality of the moment. You are here, you are building. Right now, as you listen to this, what's one thing within your control in this very moment? It might be your posture, the focus of your eyes, the next breath you take. Focus your attention there just for a few seconds. That simple act of return is the essence of Stoic residence. It's the decision to stop decorating the rooms of yesterday or tomorrow and to fully occupy the room you're actually in. A key feature of the Stoic mind is the balcony view, the ability to watch your own thoughts from a slight remove. That's cognitive detachment. It's seeing your own reactions not as commands, but as events you can observe. They happen inside you, but they aren't you. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus put it clearly. He said, "You are not your impression. You are the faculty that uses that impression." The impression is the data, the thought, the anger, the anxiety. You decide what to do with it, and that creates a space, a gap between the spark of feeling and the action you take. In that gap, your freedom resides. This isn't about suppressing what you feel. That would be like trying to stop clouds from forming. It's about changing your relationship to the weather inside. You learn to sit on the balcony of your awareness and watch the clouds pass. Some are dark and heavy, others are light and fleeting. The skill is in not mistaking yourself for the cloud. You are the sky, vast and unchanged, where the weather systems of thought and emotion move. This connects to the discipline of assent. That gatekeeper at the door of your mind is empowered by this balcony view. You can see the thought approaching, note its character. Is it worry? Is it resentment? And from that vantage point you can choose, do I let this one in? Do I believe its story, or do I just acknowledge it and let it drift by? A practical way to build this is with a simple metaphor. Picture yourself sitting by a busy road. Your thoughts and feelings are the traffic. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, they all come and go. Some are loud, others are quiet. The practice is to stay on the sidewalk. To watch the traffic without stepping into the street, without trying to stop a car or getting hit by one. You don't have to chase the pleasant thoughts. You don't have to fight the unpleasant ones, you just note them. There's a thought about work, there's a feeling of impatience, and you return your attention to the sidewalk. To your seat, to your breath. This might sound passive, but it's profoundly active. It's reclaiming your attention from the endless mental chatter. It's how you stop being a prisoner of your own reactive mind. For a minute, you can try this. Just settle into listening and notice when a thought arises. It could be about this, about your day, about anything. Don't judge it, don't follow its story. Just silently label it thinking and gently return your focus to the sound of this voice or to your next breath. You don't need to clear your mind. You're just practicing being the observer, not the passenger, of each thought train that rolls through. This small act of noticing is the foundation. It's how you build the mental architecture that stays steady, not because the thoughts stop, but because you've learned you don't have to live inside everyone. The Stoics had this phrase they'd use when making plans. If nothing prevents me, they called it the reserve clause. It's like a mental footnote you add to any intention. A quiet recognition that the world has its own flow. You pour yourself completely into the action you can control, but you let go of the final outcome. That's the dichotomy of control put into everyday language. I'll be at the meeting, fate permitting. I'll finish this project if nothing interferes. And the clause isn't a way to hold back, it's the opposite. It lets you give everything you have because your sense of worth isn't tied to a result you can't command. Your good was in the trying, in how well you prepared, how you conducted yourself. The rest is up to fortune. Seneca wrote about this. He said the wise person commits to the action but leaves the outcome to fortune. They say, I will sail across the sea if nothing prevents me. They intend to do it, they prepare, they set sail. But if a storm comes up, they don't take it as a personal failure. They don't see it as the universe betraying them. They see it as a condition of the world, an external factor. Their commitment was to the act of sailing, to navigating well. Not to commanding the waves. That mindset stops the deep frustration that comes from fused identity. When your plan and your self-worth are glued together, any disruption feels like a personal attack. The reserve clause gently separates the two. It says, I am a person who acts with excellence. Whether this particular venture succeeds is a separate matter. It's preferred, but it's indifferent to my character. Take a common modern goal. I'll give my best presentation tomorrow. That's a good intention. Now add the reserve clause. I'll give my best presentation tomorrow, fate permitting. What does that clause hold space for? The unexpected, a last-minute change in the audience. A technical failure with the slides, a sudden illness. Your commitment is to your preparation, to your clarity, to your poise. Those are yours to command. The audience's reaction, the equipment working, those are not. By adding that quiet caveat, you walk into the room with a different confidence, not the brittle kind that needs a standing ovation to feel valid. The resilient kind, from someone who knows they've done their part well and can meet whatever happens with calm. Apply it to a plan you have right now. Maybe you intend to have a peaceful family dinner this weekend, or you plan to finish a home repair, or you aim to stick to a new exercise routine for the month. Formulate that plan. Now mentally append the reserve clause. I'll host a peaceful dinner, fate permitting. I'll complete the repair if nothing prevents me. I'll follow the routine, circumstances allowing. How does that feel? For a lot of people, there's an immediate sense of relief. The pressure to control every variable lifts. The plan becomes an expression of your virtue, your effort, your care, your discipline, rather than a contract with the universe that has to be fulfilled exactly as written. This is how you build flexibility into a resilient mind. You design your intentions with a hinge, so when the world pushes, they bend instead of break. And you remain steadfastly the person who built them. The Stoic mind sees itself as a room inside a much larger universe. That's Sympatheia, this deep web that connects everything. It's the sense that your inner self isn't a fortress standing alone, but part of a living city. This takes that view from above and brings it close. It's not just looking down from a distance. It's feeling the threads that tie you to other people, to nature, to the way events unfold. That awareness is two things. It's a comfort. And it's a call. It comforts by softening the sharp edge of isolation. When you're lost in your own uncertainty, Sympatheia reminds you you're part of a pattern. A pattern much larger than your current worry. You're not a solitary note, you're part of a symphony, and it calls you to responsibility because your actions ripple through that web. That's where justice finds its real foundation. To act unjustly is to tear at the fabric you're woven into. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this. He wrote that what doesn't benefit the hive doesn't benefit the bee. In another passage, he said we're made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids. To act against another is to rebel against nature itself. Your peace is tied to the peace of the whole. This isn't a mystical idea. It's practical. You can see it in a forest. A single tree looks independent, but its roots are intertwined with fungi in the soil, sharing nutrients. Its leaves provide oxygen and shelter. It's sustained by an entire ecosystem, and it sustains that system in return. You're like that tree. Your stability is supported by invisible connections. Your well-being contributes to a larger health. In times of shared challenge, this becomes visible. Think of a community facing a widespread hardship, a power outage during a storm. In that moment, individual worries about the cold or dark or food, they often give way to a collective effort. People check on neighbors, they share resources, they offer company. The individual sense of crisis gets softened by the palpable reality of connection. You're in this together. That's Sympatheia in action. It turns a problem from my burden into our situation, and that makes the burden feel lighter because the weight is distributed across a network of care. To cultivate this sense, you don't need a grand gesture. Start with a simple act of observation. Look out a window or step outside. Can you identify one thing that reminds you of your connection? It might be the tree that cleans the air you breathe, the sidewalk built and maintained by people you'll never meet, the internet signal carrying this thought, a collaboration of countless engineers and thinkers across decades. See that object not as separate, but as a point where your life intersects with the whole. This practice builds a resilient perspective. Your personal uncertainty doesn't disappear, but it ceases to be a solitary confinement. It becomes a shared human condition, met within a context of mutual support and natural order. You are a room in a universe-sized house. And knowing you belong to the architecture, that's the ultimate foundation for calm. A stable mind in uncertain times. It doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. That's the art of contentment. The quiet understanding that peace grows through subtraction, not addition. The Stoics had a term for the things we pursue. Money, status, comfort, they called them preferred indifference. They have value, but they aren't good in themselves. They can't improve your character. Only your choices can do that. So to hinge your happiness on getting more of them, that's building your house on sand. Each desire you satisfy just makes room for a new one. It's a chase without a finish line. Contentment is stepping off that track. It's deciding that what you already have and what you already are is enough for a good life. Epictetus understood this. He started his life in servitude. He taught that wealth isn't about having great possessions but having few wants. He saw the prison that endless wanting creates. If you need a villa by the sea to be happy, you've made yourself a prisoner of that villa. Your freedom becomes conditional. But if you find the sunlight on a simple bench sufficient, that person is truly free. Seneca echoed this. He wrote that the happy life is one in harmony with nature, a life of virtue and reason, not a life burdened by luxury or anxiety. A life light enough to carry. This isn't a call to poverty. It's a call to clarity, to distinguish between what's useful and what's essential to your character. It's the practice of temperance, not as deprivation, but as the intelligent management of your needs. You reduce the number of things your happiness depends on. And in that reduction, you find a kind of exponential resilience, because when your peace requires very little from the outside world has very little power to disturb it. You could try a modern sufficiency audit. Pick one area of your life where the current of more runs strong. It could be physical possessions. Look at a crowded closet and ask what here is truly enough. Or digital consumption. Is more news, more updates, more entertainment actually increasing your understanding or your calm? Or maybe it's professional ambition. Is the next promotion, the next milestone, being pursued for a rational purpose, or just from a habit of wanting the next thing? Choose one area. For a week, practice consciously declaring this is enough. When you open your wardrobe, see the sufficiency of your choices. When you finish your planned scroll time, close the app and sit with the sufficiency of the information you have. This practice isn't about settling. It's about claiming sovereignty over your own scale of satisfaction. It builds the muscle of contentment. So take a reflective moment. What is one thing you have enough of right now? It might be something simple, the air in your lungs, the device you're listening on, the knowledge you've gained today. Take a genuine breath and feel the satisfaction with that single, sufficient thing. In that feeling, you're not building a new part of your inner citadel. You're just appreciating the strength of the foundation that's already there. One of the foundational ideas in Stoicism is remembering that life is finite. The practice is called Memento Mori. Remember you must die. It's not meant to be morbid. It's meant to be clarifying. It creates this urgency, but also a kind of calm. It takes every small worry, every little grievance, and holds it up to a single question. Does this matter given the time I have? The Stoics didn't find this depressing. They found it focusing. It cuts through all the noise of what we feel we should do and shows us what we actually need to do, the things that fit our character. Our relationships, whatever purpose we have. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this often in his private notes. He said, you could leave life right now. Let that shape what you do, what you say, what you think. In another place, he told himself to live each day as if it were your last, but also to act as if you had a long life ahead. That sounds like a contradiction. But it's a balance. The last day urgency forces you to prioritize. The long life view makes you choose actions that are sustainable, that are virtuous. It's the difference between a frantic sprint and a steady, purposeful run. You act with intention now because now is what you have, but you act in a way that builds a life you'd respect, no matter how long it lasts. Seneca wrote an entire letter on how life is short. He argued life is long enough if you use it well. The problem, he said, is we waste so much of it. We put off living. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow. Thinking about mortality is the cure for that postponement. It wakes you up to the value of the present hour. It gives you that carpe diem energy, not for wild pleasure, but for seizing the day to practice your virtues, to be kinder right now, to start that meaningful work now. To mend that relationship now. How do you practice this without getting scared? One gentle way is an evening review. As your day ends, take 2 minutes. Ask 2 questions. First, if this had been my last day, what moment would I have been most thankful for? Maybe the taste of your coffee, a real laugh with someone, the sun on your skin during a walk. Naming it makes you appreciate the day's gift more. Second, knowing a day is finite. Is there one thing I would have done differently? Maybe you'd have been more patient, spent less time scrolling, made that one phone call. This isn't about regret. It's about gathering information for tomorrow. Aligning your next day more closely with what you actually value. This practice builds a resilient point of view. The rude driver, the delayed package, the small professional slight. When you hold them against the backdrop of a short life, they lose their power to take over your emotions. They become what they are, small stones on a very long path. This doesn't make you indifferent to joy. It makes you more present for it, because you know it won't last. You hold it more gently. You appreciate it more fully. So here's a prompt for reflection, not as a dark thought, but as a lens. If you were to live this day knowing it was finite, what one thing would you make sure to do or to appreciate? It might be expressing specific gratitude to someone, fully immersing yourself in one task without distraction, or just noticing the color of the sky. That single, intentional act, chosen under the light of Memento Mori, becomes a stone placed in your inner citadel, a stone of purposeful presence. The Stoics would deliberately put themselves through voluntary discomfort. They'd stress test their own inner structure. It's like mental cross-training. You step into a manageable hardship by choice, not because you have to, but to prove to yourself that you can. It's training for courage, training for temperance. You're proving to your own fears that the things you avoid are often less powerful than the stories you tell about them. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to discover your own capacity, to reduce the fear of loss by willingly experiencing a small version of it, and then you return to your ordinary life. You see its comforts with a renewed appreciation. The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught this. He said we should practice hardship by choice, so when hardship comes by necessity, we're already prepared. He saw it as a form of freedom. If you're only comfortable in perfect conditions, you're a prisoner of those conditions. But if you can be at peace in a wider range of circumstances, your world expands. Your resilience grows. Seneca practiced this regularly. He'd set aside days to wear rough clothing, eat plain bread, sleep on a hard bed. He wrote to his friend Lucilius about it. He called it a test of his own spirit. He wasn't punishing himself. He was asking a question. Is my peace so fragile that it depends on a soft pillow? By removing the pillow, he found the answer. His peace was deeper than that. It came from within. This practice has a secondary effect. It cultivates gratitude not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience. After a day of simple food, a regular meal tastes like a feast. After a period of digital silence, the ability to connect feels like a gift. you don't just think you're fortunate. You feel it in your bones because you've briefly visited the alternative. Modern life offers safe ways to do this training. It could be taking a cold shower for the first minute of your routine. Not to torture yourself, but to feel the initial shock and then watch your mind settle into acceptance. It could be skipping a meal intentionally to understand the difference between true hunger and habitual eating. It could be a 24-hour digital detox, leaving your phone in another room to rediscover the texture of uninterrupted time. The key is that it's voluntary. Controlled and brief, it's a drill. You are the coach of your own resilience, designing a small challenge to strengthen a specific muscle. That muscle might be patience when you choose to stand in a long line without pulling out your phone. It might be endurance when you take the stairs instead of the elevator. It might be temperance when you decline a second serving not because you should, but because you're practicing the feeling of enough. Each act is a message to your subconscious. I am not ruled by comfort. I can choose discomfort when it serves my growth. So here's a reflective prompt. What small, voluntary discomfort could you introduce this week as training for your resilience? It must be safe, entirely within your control. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier to sit in quiet before the day begins. Maybe it's having a conversation without complaining, even internally. Maybe it's walking in the rain without rushing. Choose one, and as you do it, observe not the discomfort itself, but your relationship to it. Watch the stories your mind creates to resist it, and then notice the quiet confidence that follows. When you realize you passed your own test, that confidence becomes a permanent brick in your inner citadel. A brick you laid yourself through a simple, chosen act of strength. Stoicism builds character through opposition. That's the core of it. The obstacle isn't something blocking the path. It is the path. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said the impediment to action actually advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's Amor Fati, loving your fate, not just accepting it but loving it, because every part of it, especially the hard parts, gives you the exact friction you need. It's how you apply courage. Courage isn't the absence of obstacles. It's how you respond to them creatively. Think of a sculptor. The marble block isn't a problem. It's the only source of the statue. The sculptor's skill isn't shown with clay. It's shown by working with the hard resistance of the stone. Our obstacles are that marble. They're the resistant material, the material we define our strength against, our patience, our ingenuity. A bureaucratic delay, for example, it's not just a waste of time. It's an invitation to practice patience, to practice persistence, to look at your own frustration, to ask if your peace is so fragile it depends on a form being processed by a certain date. That delay becomes the raw material for building a calmer you, a more enduring you. A critical comment from a colleague. It's not just an attack, it's an opportunity. To practice the discipline of assent, to separate useful signal from emotional noise, to exercise justice by responding with fairness, not retaliation. It's fuel for temperance, for choosing a measured response over a heated one. This mindset changes your relationship with challenge. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this happening for? What virtue is it calling me to practice? Is this here to teach me resilience, to force a creative solution I wouldn't have considered on an easy path? To show me where my patience truly lies? The obstacle becomes a teacher, a strict one, a precise one. It shows you exactly where you need to grow. So take a current obstacle. A project that feels stalled, a personal goal that seems out of reach, a recurring friction in a relationship. Instead of seeing it as a wall, see it as the raw marble. How could this very thing be used to practice a Stoic virtue? Could the stalled project be a chance to practice diligent effort, focused effort without attachment to immediate results? Could the distant goal be the material for building extraordinary perseverance? Could the relationship friction be an invitation to practice understanding, or to communicate with greater clarity and kindness. In your answer, you don't just find a way around the obstacle. You discover you were holding the tools to build with it all along. The mind needs regular inspection. A structure does. For the Stoics, this was the evening review, a quiet look back at your own actions, your own thoughts. Not to judge, but to learn, to adjust, to keep your inner architecture sound. They called it an examination of conscience, a tool for self-improvement. A way to make sure you weren't drifting. Seneca wrote about this. He described ending his day by asking his soul for an account. What evils did you cure today? He'd ask. What faults did you resist? In what part are you better? It wasn't a list of failures. It was a conversation for growth, a gentle audit of his own character. The structure can be simple. It revolves around 3 questions. First, what did I do well today? Where did I act with virtue? This isn't about ego. It's about reinforcing the good. Noticing the moment you chose patience in a frustrating line, the time you offered a kind word instead of a complaint, the instance you began a difficult task despite your fear. By naming these, you strengthen the pathways of virtue. You tell your mind, this is the way. The second question is, where did I fall short? This requires honest, gentle observation. Not self-flagellation. It might be recognizing you snapped at a loved one out of stress, that you spent an hour scrolling when you meant to read, that you indulged a worry about something outside your control. The goal is diagnosis, not condemnation. You're noting where a wall in your inner citadel needs reinforcement. The third question is the corrective. How can I improve tomorrow? This turns insight into intention. If you fell short on patience, your intention might be to take 3 deep breaths before responding. If you faltered in discipline, your plan could be to put your phone in another room for the first hour of the evening. This step closes the loop. It turns reflection into a blueprint for tomorrow. Consider a common day. You had a tense work meeting. In your review, you might note you did well by listening fully before responding. That was an exercise in wisdom. You might also see you fell short by rehearsing your rebuttal while a colleague was still speaking. That was a lapse in full attention. For improvement, you could set an intention for your next meeting to place a notepad and write down 1 key point from each person before you reply. This simple act redirects your focus. It builds a better habit. The practice, done consistently, creates a feedback loop. You're no longer living on autopilot, reacting and forgetting. You're actively participating in the design of your own character. Each evening becomes a consultation with the architect within. So tonight, you might try this. Ask yourself, what was one moment today where I exercised good judgment? Where did my judgment falter? Just those 2 questions, held without drama, can begin the work of alignment. They turn the passing hours into material for a stronger self. The Stoic mind has a kind of weather, a steady, clear equanimity. That's the climate inside. It's not flat, not emotionless. It's a resilient calm, a stable place where you feel things, but they don't overthrow you. The old Stoics had a word for this, apatheia. People hear that and think apathy, a cold indifference, but it's the opposite. It's a state of freedom, freedom from the unhealthy passions, the path. Those are the things that toss you around violently. Think of them as storms, not the natural rain of sadness or the sunshine of joy. These are hurricanes. Blizzards of despair, tornadoes of craving. Equanimity is like living in a temperate zone. You still have weather. You feel the warmth of affection, the coolness of disappointment. But a sudden squall doesn't define you. Your foundation stays dry, solid. Zeno, who started all this, said the goal was a life in agreement with nature. A smooth flow. That smooth flow is equanimity in motion. It's what comes from all the practices. The dichotomy of control tells you what to engage. The discipline of assent guards your judgments. The virtues courage, wisdom, justice, temperance, they're the structural beams. Amor Fati is accepting the landscape. Apply these things, not perfectly but consistently. The outcome is this steady inner weather. You become like a deep lake. The surface ripples with the wind of events, but the water beneath stays clear. Still, take a practical contrast: reactive turbulence. You get difficult news, a project cancelled, a missed opportunity, and you spiral immediately. The mind races to catastrophic conclusions. The body tenses with anxiety, flares with anger. The whole day gets colored by that storm. Now a measured response. Equanimous, you get the same news. There's a feeling, sure, a dip, a recognition of the setback. But in that space between the event and the reaction, the trained mind engages. It sorts: this outcome is not within my control. My effort was, and I gave that. It withholds assent from the story that this is a total disaster. It asks what virtue is needed now. Maybe courage to begin again, maybe wisdom to see a new direction. The emotional wave is felt, but it doesn't crash over the whole structure. It passes through. Clarity remains. This stability isn't a suppression of being human. It's the fullest expression. It lets you feel deep love without the terror of loss controlling you. To feel ambition without the agony of envy, to feel grief without being drowned by it. The goal isn't to become a statue, it's to become a seasoned captain. You feel the wind, you feel the waves, but your hand is steady on the helm. Your course is set by principle, not by the storm. A robust Stoic mind has insulation. It's insulation against two forces: the heat of praise and the cold of blame. This isn't about becoming callous. It's not about ignoring feedback. It's about anchoring your sense of worth to something unshakable. That anchor is your own internal alignment with virtue. The opinions of others, whether they're glowing or harsh, fall outside the dichotomy of control. You can't command what someone else thinks of you. You can only command your own actions, your own intentions, your own character. To make your peace dependent on praise is to hand over the keys. You hand over the keys to your inner citadel. You become a puppet. You dance to the applause, and you freeze when it stops. Epictetus had an image for this. He said to think of yourself at a banquet. The host offers you a dish, a compliment, a bit of praise. You may take it politely if it's offered, but you don't reach across the table to grab it. You don't scramble for it. Your meal, your nourishment comes from your own plate, from the food you brought for your own soul, your integrity, your effort. The treats others pass around are just passing treats. They're not your sustenance. In a modern context, this plays out constantly. You post a piece of work online. A thoughtful comment, a creative project. The immediate reaction is quantifiable: likes, shares, critical replies. The Stoic practice is to perform the action for its own virtuous sake. You wrote to express a truth you saw. You created to honor a skill. You contributed to a discussion with good intent. That action, once taken, is complete. Its goodness resides in the doing. The social media metrics that follow are like the weather. They're like the weather that happens after you've already built your shelter. They are external events. To constantly refresh the page, seeking the warmth of validation, is to stand outside in that weather. You let it dictate your temperature. The same applies to workplace feedback. Constructive criticism can be a tool for improvement, but it must be sorted through your own wisdom. Is this feedback about an outcome you controlled? Does it point toward a way you can act with more skill or justice tomorrow? If so, use it. If it is merely personal displeasure or a fluctuating opinion, see it for what it is: a data point. Not a verdict. The goal is to act so rightly by your own internal compass that both praise and blame find you equally unmoved, not because you don't hear them, but because they don't alter the foundation you stand on. So think of a recent compliment or a criticism you received. Can you mentally separate the external evaluation from your own judgment? Your own judgment of whether you acted with virtue. The compliment feels good, but did you do the thing just to earn it? The criticism stings, but does it change your honest assessment? Your assessment of having done your best with the knowledge you had. In that space of separation, you find the insulation. You remain warm in your own conviction. Undisturbed by the changing temperatures outside, a Stoic builds their life one action at a time, focusing only on the task right in front of them. That's the idea of Kathêkon, the appropriate act. It's your duty in the immediate moment, not some grand life purpose, just the next right thing your nature and situation ask for. And our nature, as human beings, is rational and social. So our appropriate actions are done with reason and with consideration for others. That's how you turn virtue from an idea into emotion. You don't build a resilient mind by thinking about resilience. You build it by being fully present for the single brick you're laying right now. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this. In his private writings, he'd command himself to do the job of a human being well. To concentrate every minute like a Roman on what's in front of you, to do it with precise and genuine seriousness, and to be satisfied with even the smallest step forward. That's the ultimate weapon against overwhelm. When the future is a fog and the past is a closed door, the present offers you one clear, manageable duty. Your entire life's purpose collapses into the quality of your attention on this one thing. A craftsman doesn't stare at the unfinished cathedral and despair. They look at the stone in their hand, they feel its grain, they make the next cut with care, and that cut is their whole world. Think of a mundane task you often rush through. Washing the dishes after a long day, your mind wants to be anywhere else, planning tomorrow, replaying today. The Stoic practice of Kathêkon asks you to bring your entire self to that sink. Feel the warmth of the water, notice the shape of the plates, perform the act of cleaning not as a chore, but as your duty to order, to care for your space. And in that focused engagement, something shifts. The anxiety about bigger problems quiets. You are here doing a simple thing well. In that moment, you are fulfilling your nature. You are practicing patience, diligence, and presence. That is a virtuous act. It is not small. Now apply this to a modern professional task, writing a difficult email. The appropriate action isn't just sending words. It's composing a message with clarity and fairness. It's considering the recipient's perspective, choosing language that communicates without causing unnecessary harm. Your duty is to craft that single piece of communication with integrity. The reply you receive, or whether it's ignored, that is separate. That belongs to external outcomes. Your Kathêkon was the writing, and by pouring your full attention into that, you drain the task of its distracting emotional weight. You turn it from a source of anxiety into an exercise in craftsmanship. So here's a question. What is the single, most immediate right action required of you in this hour? It might be finishing a paragraph. It might be making a phone call you've postponed. It might be simply taking a few minutes to organize your workspace. Whatever it is, see it not as an item on a list, but as your current duty as a rational being. Give it your full attention. For the next 20 minutes, let that action be your entire world. In that narrowed, deep focus, you find a surprising freedom from the chaos of everything else. You are building your inner citadel, one deliberate, well-fitted stone at a time. Stoicism isn't a collection of ideas you just look at. It's a workshop. A place with tools for building your mind or fixing it. That difference is the whole thing. These principles aren't for display. They're for use, for the daily work of getting through something hard. It's a practical philosophy, a therapeutic one. You apply it when your peace is threatened, when you're stuck in traffic and the frustration comes up. That's not the moment to remember a quote. It's the moment to pick up a tool, the tool of the dichotomy of control, to sort the situation. Your calm is in your power. The traffic jam isn't. That immediate use is the entire point. Epictetus had an analogy for this. He said philosophy is like the tools of a carpenter or a shoemaker. What good is a set of chisels if you never carve wood? What use is a philosophy if you never apply it to living? The tools just gather dust. And the mind stays broken. Every principle we've talked about is one of those tools. The view from above is a tool for perspective. When a problem feels huge, you pick it up to see the bigger landscape. Amor Fati is a tool for acceptance. When you face a change you didn't want, you use it to change your relationship to the event. The evening review is a tool for alignment. You use it at the end of the day to see if your actions and your character are going the same way. These aren't abstract concepts, they're implements. For mental craftsmanship, so you might make a personal Stoic toolkit. You don't need to master every practice at once. That's like trying to build a house with every tool at the same time. Start with 2 or 3 from our talk that connect to a challenge you have now. If your main stress is uncertainty about the future, your toolkit might hold the reserve clause for your plans. And the practice of focusing only on the next right action. If social friction is draining you, your tools might be the discipline of assent, to question your judgments of others. And the virtue of justice, to meet them with fairness. Write these down, name them, keep the list simple on a note card or in your phone. Naming them makes them more accessible. Then when a hard moment comes, you can pause. You can ask which tool is for this job. It turns a feeling of helplessness into a process. You're not just enduring the storm. You're consulting a blueprint and reaching for the right implement. So here's a question to end with. Which tool from today feels most relevant to a challenge you're facing right now? Is it the filter of control, the mental rehearsal of premeditation, the balcony view of your thoughts? Choose one, and then ask, how will I use it this week? Be specific. If it's the filter, you might decide the next time you worry about a family member's health, you'll consciously sort it. My care and support are within my control. The medical outcome is not. That simple, deliberate act of sorting is you using the tool. That's how the workshop works, not through admiration, through the steady, quiet sound of purposeful work. Everything changes. That's the universal building code. Stability comes from building with that, not against it. It's the acceptance of impermanence, not as a sad truth, but as the structural reality. The ground your inner citadel stands on. You don't build a house on a riverbank and curse the water for moving. You build a house that can withstand the current. Or you choose a foundation that understands the flow. The Stoic mind chooses that. It sees flux not as an enemy to be defeated, but as the natural state of all things. This principle connects the other practices. Amor Fati is loving this flow, even its difficult turns. Memento Mori is the personal reminder, the urgent one. Applied to your own life, the view from above shows you the vast, changing landscape, the one where your own brief story unfolds. To resist change is to resist reality itself. It's a form of self-inflicted friction, like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. Marcus Aurelius returned to this constantly in his private writings. He reflected on the ceaseless flow of existence, how all things are born from change, and to change they return. He wrote of viewing the world as a single living thing. With a single substance, a single soul. Observe how all things are produced by change, he told himself. Think of the constant forming and reforming of the universe. This perspective wasn't meant to make him feel small. It was to place him correctly within a magnificent, dynamic system. His peace depended on harmonizing his expectations with that system's fundamental rule. Nothing stands still. Consider a modern source of stress, the changing landscape of a career. An industry shifts, a role becomes obsolete, a skill you mastered is no longer in demand. The natural reaction is often panic, grief, a sense of betrayal. The world has moved and it feels like it left you behind. The Stoic mind, built with this law in mind, meets the same shift differently. It first acknowledges the truth. Change is the default. Industries have always evolved. Roles have always transformed. this event is not a violation of how things should be. It is a demonstration of how things are. From that acceptance, you can engage wisely. You ask, what is within my control here, my ability to learn, to adapt, to pivot my efforts toward a new need. The change itself is not within your control. Your response to it is your entire domain. This applies just as powerfully to personal relationships. They are living things, and living things grow, evolve, and sometimes fade. Trying to freeze a friendship at a perfect moment in time is like trying to preserve a rose in ice. You might capture a shape, but you lose the life. The Stoic approach is to appreciate each phase for what it is, to contribute to the relationship's health in the present, and to accept that its form may change. This doesn't mean you don't feel loss when a connection alters or ends. It means you don't compound that natural sorrow with the added suffering of believing it shouldn't have happened. You placed your structure on the riverbank and you built it well. You enjoyed the view while it lasted. Now the river has shifted course, as rivers do. So here's a reflective prompt. What is one thing you are trying to hold constant that is inherently subject to change? It could be your physical energy, your social circle, the stability of a routine, or even a feeling of certainty about tomorrow. Can you practice just for today, relaxing your mental grip on it? Not with resignation, but with a quiet acknowledgement. This too is part of the flow, and your strength lies not in stopping the water, but in learning how to swim. Gratitude is like mortar. It holds things together when the ground feels unstable. And this isn't just about feeling thankful, it's a practice, a way of seeing. It actively strengthens you. For the Stoics, gratitude was a kind of wisdom. It means seeing everything in your life, the good and the bad, as something that offers a benefit. A lesson, a chance to practice. This connects to other practices. Negative visualization, that exercise where you imagine losing things. It works because it shocks you into gratitude for what you have now. And Amor Fati, loving your fate, that's gratitude at its deepest level. It's being thankful for the obstacle itself, because it's the exact teacher you needed. Seneca wrote about this. He told his friend Lucilius to give thanks, not just for the good things, but for difficult people, for hard circumstances. He saw them as trainers. Rigorous trainers for the soul. He said to welcome every experience, to greet it all with gratitude. Even hardship, he wrote, brings this benefit. It shows you who you are. It tests your inner citadel. That shift changes everything. The difficult colleague becomes a drill sergeant for your patience. The delayed flight becomes a forced pause. A chance to practice calm in the middle of chaos. A minor illness becomes a reminder of the body. A chance to practice temperance. This extends to the simple things. The Stoics called things like comfort and health preferred indifference. They aren't good in themselves, but we prefer them. Active gratitude turns them into sources of steadiness. You don't just have a bed, you feel the support it gives. You don't just eat a meal, you recognize the chain of events that brought it to you. That daily recognition of sufficiency is an antidote to wanting more. It proves to your mind that you have enough. So here's a simple practice. Before you sleep, take a quiet moment. Thank 3 specific things. First, thank one person for a kindness today or just for their presence. Second, thank one circumstance, even a hard one. Name the challenge and say what lesson it's inviting. Third, thank one simple provision you always overlook. The water from the tap, the light switch that works, the quiet in the room. That triad covers the social, the existential, and the mundane. It trains your mind to find the gift in every layer. Done consistently, this remodels your perception. It turns the world from a source of threats into a field of offerings. Each thank you is like adding mortar. It binds the stones of your character until you stand on a foundation that uncertainty can't erode. The most important thing in the Stoic mind is the self-talk. That voice inside, is it a critic or is it a guide? The Greeks had a word for this, the Dialogos. It's like the operating system. It takes everything that happens, every impression, and it processes it. And the tone of that voice decides everything. It decides whether you see a crisis or a training ground. The Stoic disciplines are really tools for that. They are for reprogramming that dialogue. There's the Discipline of Assent. That's about catching the first draft of a thought. Before you accept it as truth, you intercept it. And then there's the Discipline of Desire. That trains you to question the stories of craving or of aversion that your mind just generates on its own. Together, they let you replace something chaotic, a reactive monologue. You replace it with something calm, an instructive one. That's self-governance. You stop being a passive listener to your own fears. You become the author. Marcus Aurelius left a manual for this. His meditations, they aren't polished philosophy. They're raw, they're repetitive, urgent notes to himself. You can see him reprogramming his Dialogos. Faced with the irritations of court life, he didn't just fume. He wrote reminders. He'd tell himself first thing in the morning, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, selfishness." He was installing a software patch, pre-loading his mind with a rational expectation, so when the event happened, his inner voice was already prepared. Prepared with understanding, not shock. He was scripting the wise guide's response in advance. Think of a common modern script. You make a minor mistake at work. The automatic, critical Dialogos might sound like, "This is a disaster. They'll think I'm incompetent. I'll never recover." That voice is a panic monger. It takes one event and writes a catastrophic novel about your future. The Stoic practice is to catch that script mid-sentence, to pause, and to consciously reframe the dialogue. Using principle, you might say, "This is not a disaster, it's an opportunity to practice integrity by correcting the error. My worth isn't defined by this single outcome. My effort to do well is within my control. The perception of others is not." This reframing doesn't erase the mistake. It changes your relationship to it. It turns the inner voice from a source of extra suffering into a source of steadying guidance. The emotion might still be there, a flicker of embarrassment. But now it's accompanied by a wiser narrator. A narrator explaining the scene, not screaming about it. This practice turns anxiety into a signal. The next time you feel that tightening in your chest, that swirl of worry, see it as a notification. Your inner critic has opened a noisy app. Your job isn't to believe everything it says. Your job is to open the settings menu, to examine the permissions you've given that thought, and to choose to run a different program, a quieter one built on the facts of the situation and the virtues you wish to embody. So a simple prompt for observation. In your next moment of stress, however small, try to notice the tone of your inner voice. Is it shouting? Is it pleading? Is it repeating a fearful story on a loop? Just observe it without judgment, then ask yourself, if a wise, kind, and utterly calm inner sage were sitting in your mind, what single sentence would they say about this? Would they remind you of what's truly within your power? Would they point you toward a virtue you could practice? That one sentence is the beginning. The beginning of a new Dialogos, and the beginning of true command over the room where all your decisions are made. A blueprint isn't the building. The real test is how the Stoic mind moves from design into action. All that inner work, the sorting, the perspective, the disciplined assent, it's just theory until it moves your hands, until it shapes what you actually do. That's the integration where virtue becomes a verb. The Stoic architecture isn't complete if it only shelters you. It has to have doors, and your principles have to walk out through them into the day. The ancient ideal was the sage, someone whose every action, however small, flowed seamlessly from virtue, not from impulse, not from social pressure. From a deep, aligned character. Epictetus put it plainly, "Don't explain your philosophy," he said, "embody it. Your life is your philosophy, written in deeds, not words." This synthesis is where the four cardinal virtues stop being separate ideas. They become a single, lived response. Wisdom chooses the right action. Courage executes it despite fear. Justice ensures it considers the common good, and temperance moderates the effort so it's sustainable, not excessive. They work as one system. Under pressure, that integration is what people actually see. It's not the calm you feel inside during a crisis. It's the calm others witness in your conduct. It's the fairness you extend when you have the power to be unfair. It's the patience you show when every fiber wants to snap. Take a difficult colleague, someone who consistently dismisses your ideas. The inner work might involve the discipline of assent, questioning your judgment that they're a personal enemy. It might involve the view from above, seeing this as one small friction in a long career. But the integration, the virtue indeed, is what you do in the next meeting. It's the action of justice, choosing to acknowledge their point before carefully presenting your own. It's the courage to advocate for your position without hostility. It's the temperance to keep your tone measured, and it's the wisdom to know that changing their mind isn't the goal. Your goal is to act with integrity. The action itself is the completed architecture, or a moment of private responsibility. You're tired. You promise to review a document for a friend. The easier path is to send a quick, vague approval. But the integrated Stoic mind sees this as a test of its justice and wisdom. The right action is to give the task your full attention, even for 15 minutes. To offer thoughtful feedback because you gave your word. The virtue is in the deed, that focused, generous effort performed without an audience, without reward. It's a brick laid in the structure of your character, invisible to the world but essential to its strength. The Stoics were relentless on this. Philosophy isn't for the lecture hall. It's for the marketplace, for the home, for the battlefield of daily choice. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, constantly reminded himself that his job was to do the work of a human being. Right now, to get up and do what nature requires, to act and not be frozen in contemplation. So here's a reflective prompt. Look back on one Stoic principle from our discussion. Maybe it's the reserve clause, or Amor Fati, or the discipline of assent. Now ask yourself, what's one concrete, small action you could take tomorrow to embody it? If your chosen principle is justice, your action might be to consciously perform one act of unseen fairness, letting someone else take credit, or listening fully to a person you usually interrupt. If it's Amor Fati, your action might be to meet one small frustration tomorrow, not with resistance, but with a quiet, internal nod, accepting it as the necessary grain of sand that polishes your patience. Choose the principle, design the deed, and then perform it. That moment of action, however minor it seems, is where the blueprint finally meets the ground. It's where you stop designing a resilient mind and start inhabiting one. You're not building a shed for a storm, you're building a cathedral for a lifetime. The work is slow, it's deliberate, and it's never really finished. That's the long view of Stoic practice. It's a project measured in decades, not days. A commitment to gradual improvement where the goal isn't perfection. It's a life lived with increasing alignment, with deeper resilience, and that perspective gives you something. It offers patience with yourself, setbacks, days where you react poorly, moments where old fears come back. Those aren't failures that ruin the whole structure. They're surveys. They show you where a wall needs more mortar, where a beam could use a brace. They're part of the training itself. The ancient Stoics had a word for someone on this path. A prokopton, a progressor, someone making headway, and the key was in the motion, the direction, not in having arrived. Seneca wrote about this. He described philosophy not as popular entertainment, but as a guide for the soul. He urged daily examination, daily effort. He said we should ask ourselves each night, what evil did you cure today? What fault did you resist? In what part are you better? The questions themselves assume you're a work in progress. They're the architect's daily inspection, noting the solid work and the cracks that need attention. Another Stoic cleans compared the practice to walking a tightrope. It requires constant, careful effort. You don't learn to walk the rope once and then relax. You have to attend to each step forever. The moment you think you've mastered it, the moment you stop paying attention, that's when you fall. That's the nature of building a mind. It's active maintenance, a lifelong stewardship of your own character. Think of a skill you've honed over years, playing an instrument, speaking a language, a craft like woodworking. You didn't become proficient in a week. There were frustrating practice sessions, wrong notes, misspoken phrases, projects that didn't turn out. You didn't declare yourself a failure and quit. You saw each mistake as information. You adjusted your technique. You tried again. The cultivation of wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, it's the same. It's the highest craft. Your material is your own judgment, your own reaction. Your daily life is the workshop. Take a practical application. How you view a so-called bad day. One where you lose your temper over something trivial, or you spend the afternoon consumed by a worry you know is irrational. The untrained mind might see that as a total collapse. All that Stoic study was for nothing. The long view reinterprets it. It says, today revealed a stress point. My patience was thinner than I thought under fatigue. My discipline was weak in the face of that specific worry. This isn't ruin, it's a discovery. Now you know where to focus your practice tomorrow. Maybe you need to rehearse that scenario, or ensure better rest, or have a phrase ready to interrupt the spiral. The setback becomes the blueprint for the next phase of construction. So here's a reflective prompt. Can you think of one area of your inner architecture where you've seen gradual improvement over the years? It might be something simple, pausing to breathe before responding in an argument where you once would have erupted. Or a greater ability to listen without immediately planning your rebuttal, or a quieter acceptance when plans change suddenly. Take a moment to acknowledge that progress. Not with pride, but with the steady recognition of a craftsman who sees a wall standing straighter than it did a year ago. That acknowledgement fuels the long work. It reminds you that the cathedral rises, stone by patient stone, across the whole of a life. The work is internal, but it doesn't happen alone. A Stoic mind gets stronger inside a community. A resilient self is personal, but it can be supported by shared effort. The ancient Stoics knew this. Their philosophy wasn't for hermits, it was for people in the world. Zeno, the founder, taught from a painted porch in Athens, the Stoa Poikile. That's where the name comes from. It was a public space, a school, a place for dialogue, for challenge. A community of practitioners. You could test your ideas against other minds, find encouragement when your own resolve started to thin. This shared architecture connects to the virtues. Justice means contributing to the common good. Sympatheia is our interconnectedness. Engaging with a community is both. Your inner citadel is your own, but the principles for building it are universal. You can learn from the blueprints others made from their struggles, and you can offer your own insights to help shore up someone else's walls. In long periods of uncertainty, that becomes a powerful resource. When stress narrows your view, a community gives you a wider one. Someone else might have faced a similar challenge. They might have found a Stoic tool that worked. Their story becomes a new tool in your kit. Modern versions of the Stoa are everywhere. Online forums where people share daily reflections. Local book clubs discussing the ancient texts. Even a simple agreement with a friend, a weekly check-in, not to complain but to ask where you practiced virtue that week, where you stumbled, what you learned. The community isn't for easy answers. Its value is accountability and shared learning. It's harder to let a principle slide when you've committed to talking about it. Explaining a concept to someone else deepens your own understanding. Hearing how another person applied the dichotomy of control to a parenting problem or a health scare can show you new ways to use it. Think about the practical step of finding or forming a group. It doesn't need to be formal. It could start with one conversation, sharing a passage from Marcus Aurelius that resonated with you, asking a friend what they think, joining an online community and committing to read one thoughtful post each day, not just scroll. The act of seeking connection around these ideas is itself a Stoic practice. It takes courage to be vulnerable about your growth. It's an act of justice to offer support to others. So here's a prompt. Who is one person you could talk to about these ideas? Someone whose resilience you admire, or what's one online community you could explore? The first step isn't to have all the answers, it's to reach out. To acknowledge the shared work of building something sturdy together in a world that often feels anything but. This architecture is a home you can always return to. We started with a simple filter, sorting what's ours from what isn't, and we built up from there to a kind of inner citadel, a resilient one. The journey went through the foundational virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, and then the daily disciplines that make them real, the view from above, the love of fate, the quiet evening review. These aren't just ideas, they're tools for constructing a mind that stays steady, not because the world is still, but because the design accounts for the movement. The theme is sovereignty. Your peace is an internal project, built on the bedrock of your own choices, your own judgments. It's a durable home for the self. Built to withstand seasons, the inevitable seasons of uncertainty. Epictetus reminded us, freedom is secured not by fulfilling desire, but by mastering it. And within that mastery, within this ordered inner space, you find a peace, a lasting one. Marcus Aurelius described it as a retreat, a place you can go, more peaceful than any external harbor. So as we finish, here's a prompt, a reflective one. Look back over this exploration of the Stoic mind. Choose one cornerstone practice, one single tool from the workshop we walked through, to focus on for the coming week. Will it be applying the dichotomy of control to your first worry each morning? Or practicing the discipline of assent before a difficult conversation? Maybe it's the evening review or a moment of voluntary discomfort to test your resilience. Choose one, commit to it as your personal construction project for the next 7 days. I'd love to hear which principle resonated most. Share your chosen cornerstone in the comments. It helps build our own community of practice here. And if you found this journey valuable, consider subscribing for more explorations, more practical philosophy. Thank you for your time, your attention. Keep building.